Remakes are amazing. And remakes are trash. I love them, but they are the equivalent of that greasy, sugary, slimy bomb of diabetes that you have as comfort food. The one you know you should stop eating, although it's getting harder, as it is the best time for video game remakes ever, and it shows. Not only we already got buckets of nostalgia, but the list of upcoming ones includes Witcher 1, Metal Gear Snake Eater, Splinter Cell, Prince of Persia, Gothic, Max Payne, Silent Hill 2, Knights of the Old Republic, and so many others, because the list is growing ever faster. Which is admittedly
a little bit spicy,
but not necessarily a good thing. Anyhow, before getting into that, let's talk about why this is not only the best, but also probably the last golden era for gaming remakes. Why is it the best? Well, time is contagious. Everybody's getting old. I want you to think about these eras of gaming history. The 8-bit era, when home gaming was truly born as a serious contender, together with many of the biggest franchises we are still playing today. The 16-bit era, the classical times, where games truly became part of the social consciousness and started to be seen as pieces of art. And the 3D era, the Renaissance, a time where the shackles of 2 dimensions were truly broken and everything got painted under a new light. A tacky, polygonal one, but new nonetheless, which opened the doors for modern gaming. Do you know what those generations have in common? Well, that if you live them, you already traded young for nostalgic. And if I really think about it, even the kids who grew during the 6th generation of consoles and their PC counterparts are already there too. Oh.
Today, for the first time on a documentary, you can see on screen the exact moment a midlife crisis starts.
Screw that. This is not about my impending doom. This is about brains, priming and experience, things that make us perfect targets for remakes. And trust me when I tell you that companies know perfectly well when a generation is in that nothing new feels as good state. Why do we get there though? Well, as kids our brain will shoot dopamine at every shiny new thing, thirsty for developing new experiences, since to survive we need to create quick baselines, a map of what is good or bad in our current environment. So we develop very quick associations between a banana being nice and a death noodle being dangerous. These first associations are extremely strong and lasting, but as we keep experiencing similar things, the less our brain registers. As we don't need to rewrite existing valid information, you remember banana, and too green banana or too mature banana, but not banana number 385. As that would fill our hard drive with bananas, as appealing that could be. This is why we'll always have people ranting about food tasting better in the past, or why we remember well the first time we had sex, as mediocre it might have been, but we'll forget the 1000th time even if it was a bedroom masterpiece. Thus, the whole first love mythos and all that stupid statement of the best years of your life. This is also what makes us feel that modern games are not as special as our childhood favorites. Let's keep it simple and pretend your first JRPG was Final Fantasy VII. Your brain grabbed that like a greedy, horny bear. Let's say that the next one was Grandia. Well, you didn't just play Grandia, you played it versus the parts of Final Fantasy VII your brain had engraved. And whatever was too similar didn't register as strongly. The next game will face those two together, so it gets worse. To the point where you play a game and 2 weeks after finishing it, you barely remember anything. Here is where nostalgia starts to sting, as the more experienced we are, the harder it is for anything new to move us, besides the old masterpiece or something from our memories. The thing is, banana will always be good when hungry, as it's reinforced by other mechanisms. However, we can't go for Final Fantasy VII every time we get bored. It doesn't work that way. Because what we actually miss is being high on dopamine and not having our prefrontal cortex developed. And the more you play the game, the less it will generate dopamine. But you know what we can do? Drool whenever they show us a high-definition version of Cloud in a Dress. So they will throw those nice graphics, all that new-gen bling and some jiggle physics to your old favorite, and if they are cheeky, proceed to slice again into who knows how many fully priced different pieces. And we'll still buy it because we are all suckers for nostalgia. But hey, I also said this can be the last golden era for remakes, and us being suckers for nostalgia is not enough for that. As if Caesar was already nostalgic for Cleopatra's sweet cheeks over 2000 years ago, what's going to make the next generations any different? Well, nothing, we haven't changed. Our reality has though. We went from having a fistful of games we played till they died, to having hundreds that we don't even play. We traded a couple magazines for a cacophony of a million dissenting voices. Every new game is news for around 5 minutes, and within this booming, it seems more games get released each week than in a whole year back then. Is this a better time for gamers though? Yeah, more information and being able to buy 50 games for the price of what we paid for one would have been a dream back then. But does this make our brain numb? Absolutely. Plus, back then society was designed to create superstars, and video games were no exception. Every good game was an event that lasted for a long time. You'd see it on all the magazine covers, you'd get free demos, posters, stickers, guides, special editions, and everybody that cared about games was ranting about the good ones. In the same sense, you didn't survive the 80s without knowing about Michael Jackson, you didn't survive them without knowing about Mario. The 90s without Nirvana, Street Fighter or Resident Evil. Nor the early 2000s without hearing Bring Me to Life on every single radio, or without being told how Grand Theft Auto would turn every single kid into a criminal. All this helped to engrave popular games in the minds of a generation, to the point that if I put this song up, some of you will perk your ears. But even if you never heard it, you know about this effect. Because games like Metal Gear remain on the zeitgeist even 25 years later. Back to the Future, where content is algorithmically focused on our interests, so not everybody gets the same, and the amount we get every single day is massive, thus things can become huge social phenomena as easily. It wasn't video that killed the radio star, it was high-speed internet. Just try to pick a game from the last 10 years that is not a part of an older series, that had the same impact as the games we are remaking today. And tell me, what will they be remaking in 20 years? Fortnite? Besides, remaking a modern game wouldn't even have the same visual impact. Making this look magnitudes better was easy, but how are they going to remake today's graphics? Letting us count the model's nose hair? Let's be real, we are past the era of better graphics making an impact. We need better style. But that doesn't matter, because today is golden and companies are popping remakes like Autumn pops mushrooms in weird places.
That's a pin.
Which makes it a good time to ask, what makes a good remake? As it might be the best time to sell remakes, but it is the time where they make the least amount of sense, at least for us. For the days when each new console was a whole different weird architecture, PCs were pieces of junk, and remakes were the only way to play games from a device we didn't own, are long past. Today, PCs are great, and consoles are PCs in weird shapes. We have services reviving and selling old games, and for the ones you can get there, you can usually find them around. We live at a time where emulators do a better work remastering games that most companies have done in the past. That's why, before making this video, my answer would have been that a good remake is a remake never made. But that was me being a negative asshole, and I've changed my opinion. Kind of. For me, the answer to what makes a good remake has two phases, the technical and the sensical. The technical can be treated as subjectively as possible if we agree on seeing a remake as picking something that already exists, understanding its parts, and rebuilding them from the ground up to get the same general product, but better. If most key parts are better than the original, we'll have a good remake from a technical standpoint. We'll put that to the test with the game that single-handedly pushed the remake craze to new levels, Resident Evil 2 Remake, which is not only the highest selling Resident Evil up to date, but also the best remake of all times, according to many gaming sites. The same that probably also think that McDonald's is high cuisine because it is extremely popular. As RE2 Remake is a great game, but a shitty remake. So let's do some video game anatomy and break it into pieces. We can divide visuals in graphics and style. And about the former, well, come back in 25 years and your graphics will look worse too. The remake gets this one, as all remakes should. Style is a bit harder and way more important. The choice is between the colorful, bright original to the dark, moody look of the remake. The original is more cinematic, with its fixed cameras, and the contrast between vivid colors and the horrible events is quite eye-catching. It really conveys the feeling of a world caught with its pants down by a zombie apocalypse, and it has a lot of personality, especially in a genre where scary environments tend to be represented as dark as possible, like in the remake that trades that look to be better at creating a scary playground, at the price of feeling similar to, well, most horror games or movies. Dark, dark and dark, but it does dark so well that what is lost in uniqueness is gained in atmosphere, so I'll give them a draw. But this is the most subjective point, so feel free to argue with me, I'll fight you. The audio aspect can be divided between effects, voices and music. Effects and voices are superior in the remake, although sometimes I miss the cheesy 90s.
This is good news. We can get you to a hospital.
No, I am not the priority here.
Lieutenant, I'm not just gonna leave you here.
I'm giving you an order, rookie! You save yourself first.
Oh, man. Who are you? Oh, you must be the new guy. Leon. Sorry, but it looks like your party has been cancelled.
But the music? Well, the fact that they ended up having to drop the soundtrack of the original into the remake should tell you something. And the fact that they did so as a paid DLC was a cash grab spit in the face, so this goes to the original. Then we can talk about narrative, where the original wins again, both by connecting the game better to Resident Evil 1, by giving us way more background information, and by not having a last-minute, half-baked beast scenario. About gameplay, both games are perfectly playable, polished and enjoyable, so it's down to choice between tank controls or third-person action. Do you like driving stick or automatic? It's that type of deal. I personally prefer the renewed gameplay, but this is not about taste, as personal taste measures nothing in a world where many people enjoy the smell of their own thoughts, so it's a draw again. And finally we can talk about content. Well, the remake shut up on the biggest selling point of Resident Evil 2, the interaction between the AV scenarios, as they originally planned to remake only one scenario, but they ended up half-baking both. A couple of extra modes won't do it if the main game is actually cut, so we end up with a list like this, which makes me say that Resident Evil 2 Remake is not a good remake. It's kind of like when Chevrolet decided to remake the Blazer and turned it into whatever this is, which is a great product and sold very well, but if you want to experience a Blazer, you still have to go with the original, and the same happens with the game. We can apply this kind of list to whatever remake, even to compare and see that with Resident Evil 4 they learned from Ford and pulled the Bronco, because this is how a remake should look once compared to the original. But that's only half of it, we still have to answer the sensical part, which is easier to determine. Just a short question: does the game make sense? And by that I mean, does it actually fix anything for players? Which is the thin line between what a remake is and what a cash grab is. The fact that not only the game will make money, but that it is, in any sense, needed. Otherwise, a port or just updating an old game is better, because remakes have a price. No, not that one. Remakes have two prices. The selling one and having a whole team dedicating time, talent and money to bring a game we can already play instead of making a new one. Now I ask from you to remove the pink tinted glasses of nostalgia and ask yourself if you'd rather have 3 remakes like we have, or if you'd have preferred to have 3 new Resident Evils done with the amount of talent the remakes were made, as in a sense we've been stolen the chance of enjoying 3 potential new masterpieces just because selling a past success is way easier and less risky. And they could have gone for the nostalgia factor. For example, we could have played the story of Elsa Walker, the original planned protagonist of Resident Evil 2, in parallel to the events of the original game, sharing certain scenarios without breaking canon, maybe even seeing Leon's booty from afar, or even playing the classical stories but from the side of Umbrella. And I bet you could come with better ideas than I, because I really don't know the saga that well. The thing here is, the originals still look, play and sound amazing, especially with mods. The only issue is not having a way to get 2 and 3 outside of second-hand or piracy, because Capcom stopped giving a cucumber about them. But if modders manage to make them playable on modern systems, so can they, and we could still buy them, as those 2 are still the best version, especially 3. Or maybe, if you make a sloppy remake, include the original with it, that would be a very nice detail. Let me stop here, as this is not a Resident Evil remake hate video, since I actually like them quite a lot. I just got carried away. But what I said about them will fit most new remakes. Just take the sister franchise, Silent Hill, where they decided to reheat yesterday's success, instead of making the new title fans have been asking since the release of certain playable teaser. You know, the same one the community remade from scratch when Konami tried to hide it under the rug by making it unavailable. Remaking Silent Hill 2 is the lowest effort with the highest chance for success. Outright lazy, and we're going to love it at the price of what could have been. And I know, it's hard to compare what we have versus what could have been, especially when what we have feels good. Just ask yourself, would you have Witcher 2 Remake at the cost of never having had Witcher 3? Would you like Bethesda saying that the Elder Scrolls 6 is put on hold so we can get Skyrim remade? Probably not. And both isn't a valid answer, as you can clone dev teams nor budgets. But at the same time, yeah, we could get both. Because game developers are the luckiest artist group in the world, as they can have a relationship with fans no other artist can. Picture this. Someone suddenly accuses you of being a cat lady or whatever the male equivalent is. And while you think about how to counter such preposterous accusation, you paint a portrait of your cat. Then some mad lad likes it so much that decides to spend thousands of hours improving it to the point that it's almost equivalent to having this magnificent being around you. Not only that, whenever someone wants to buy him a copy, they'll say that they'll give the copy for free to whomever buys a cat portrait from you first. This doesn't happen unless you're part of the gaming business. Because that's what exactly happens if companies are smart about it. In a couple of years we'll be getting whole remakes of both Morrowind and Oblivion made by the community. Because gamers are the worst type of crazy girlfriend. They won't let anything go. And if you want those remakes, you'll need to have official copies of Skyrim, Morrowind and Oblivion. Given that I don't know where my CDs are and that my computer doesn't even know what a CD is, you can bet that they are going to sell copies out of this. Hundreds of dedicated modders using thousands of their personal hours so Bethesda can profit, just by letting people tinker with the game.
It actually works perfectly.
Labors of love like the Memoria project should open our eyes to what we could get if companies allowed more leeway with their IPs. We all win, especially them. And in a perfect world, companies would not only encourage that, but also share a part of the profits directly linked to those projects. But who am I trying to kid? After all, your average gaming company is to their old titles as a dog guarding a bunch of vegetables, more willing to let them rot than to let anybody else have a bite. Did you know that Resident Evil 2, 3 and 4 already have modded HD versions? Did you know that we could have had remakes for both Resident Evil 1 and Code Veronica? Could, but the copyright hammer fell hard. And I get it, it's their IP, they have all the rights for doing so. But just name a game that allowed the community of modders to tinker and create new stuff, and didn't get magnitudes better by doing so. Minecraft, Terraria, Skyrim, Mountain Blade, all titles that became what they are for allowing modders to implement bug mechanics. The fact that most gaming conservation is done through piracy should tell you how much these companies actually care about their own games. But that's a whole different subject. Shifting to something more positive, you might recall me saying that I changed my mind, as while indulging myself on a rabbit hole of remakes, one title went and convinced me that there are remakes that make sense. A lot of sense. And that was System Shock. You know, the original Metroidvania shooter from back when Metroidvanias weren't a thing yet. The granddaddy of, well, most horror shooters and immersive sims. A game from an era when most digital fiction was still inspired by novels, when hackers were defined as cyberpunk cowboys riding steeds made of code on the cyberspace, which was a half mystical, half digital playground made of polygons, neon lights and danger, walking the dark alleys of what was defined as a consensual hallucination experienced daily by billions of operators. Which sounds better than, whatever this dystopian nightmare attempts to be. And yes, of course, the game better remembered for making dominatrix AIs kinky.
Look at you, hacker. A pathetic creature of meat and bone, panting and sweating as you run through my corridors.
The remake was developed by a team known for getting the rights of abandonware games and updating them for modern systems, which already gives them points in my book. They are Night Dive Studios. And it is one of those odd cases where, when you play it, it feels both new and extremely retro by design, as it verges on the thin line of being faithful to a fault. But what one can't deny is that even after rebuilding all the systems for modern comforts, it still feels as System Shock as the original did. But that's not enough, right? Let's put it on that remake list. It not only ticks all the design buttons, but to the nasty question, is it really needed? The answer is fuck yeah! If choosing between tank controls and the third-person action style was like choosing between driving stick or automatic, choosing the original System Shock would be a car without brakes or direction on a downslope and in flames. This is me, failing to grasp the controls the first time I fire it up. It is extremely clunky. The UI is garbage. You have to swap modes when you want to shoot and move and when you want to interact with stuff. Enemies are as dumb as they get. It is a masterpiece, from an era where they had to reinvent the wheel every single time they tried something new. So playing it can be as smooth as cleaning your bum with a belt sander. You can't realistically expect someone used to the comforts of modern gaming to play it, as by today's standards it is basically broken. But at the same time, it's quite sad to see the gaming equivalent of a groundbreaking museum piece die. Hence here, yeah, this remake makes a lot of sense. And besides, it's not like we can expect much about System Shock 3, has been in the claws of Tencent since forever. This is what Remake should be, a way to bring back old gems that are flawed, damaged or barely playable by today's standards, and not a quick cash fix for a massive company averse to the risk of making a new title. But hey, if the whole remake boom coming from big-ass companies motivates some smaller devs like Night Dive that might not even have an original idea to make remakes for games that needed one, well, I think that's a win. It's just a shame for the titles under the grasp of behemoths like Square that will remain in obscurity. It wasn't Final Fantasy VII the one that needed a remake. It was Xenogears or Soul River, both unfinished masterpieces that would deserve to be completed. So if you lend me your ear and I can convince some of you to get your AAA remakes on sale and invest what you saved on the small companies and modders that truly show love to old school gaming, well, I'd consider that a win. As, after all, this video was just a way for me to justify the stupid amount of time I've recently spent on games that I already played in the past, while yet again ignoring the dreadful fact that time goes away. Thanks for being around. Feel free to argue with me on the comments, I'll answer, and I hope to see you on the next one, where I'll talk about the lost art of cutting grass.